Hello everyone. Welcome back to The Plastic Depth. I'm your host, Frame 5 Studios, and guess what? I know what you all were thinking. Typical Austin. He's gonna produce one thing, disappear, and never start it again, and it'll become a Guns of Cordis situation. No, that is not happening today. We do have a second episode. I know it's been like 90 days since the last one, so I do apologize. But I have been meaning to get this done, and before we get into it, I just want to do a quick little some food for thought here in the beginning. Whenever you think you don't have time to do something, just think about everything else you have going on, and then ask yourself if you really don't have time. Like, I think a lot of us can say, we get into our habits. I don't know about you guys, but when I was younger, I would scroll on social media a lot and just say I wouldn't have time to animate, but I would have plenty of time. I just would choose not to spend it animating. I would do things like scroll or binge watch Netflix or whatever, or play a video game, whatever that vice was at the time, you know. So if you find yourself in a situation like this, you know, maybe think differently. I think growing up and getting married has matured me quite a bit, but nevertheless, guys, we're here, and I know I talked about it a little bit in the first episode, but I wanted to spend an actual episode on one of my favorite brick films of all time, and it is Picturesque by Jonathan Vaughan. And why I wanted to start with this is because it's the first thing that I think about when I think about like depth and nuance and the abilities that Lego can, you know, be in this medium. I immediately think of Picturesque and how great it is. So this was made 15 years ago, okay? And back then, like, I remember this coming out, I was floored by the talking, like the mouth movement and the green screen that Vaughn had done at the time. All sorts of different effects. Some were practical, some weren't. And I have it playing on the screen with some freeze frames, so if you want to take a look at it, you know, feel free. But one of the things that I loved about this is the surprising amount of depth. I wouldn't call it surprising, but I think some people, I think back in the day, might have thought so. But basically, it follows this, you know, futuristic, you know, America where there are portals, and they're made by a painter called the Portal Painter. And basically, the government was concerned that, you know, some people might use picture portals like for evil. Think of just like crime or espionage, something like that. And the story follows a detective that is basically trying to figure out, you know, who kidnapped the president and some other officials and various things like that. And it's so beautiful, even 15 years later. And I don't want to talk about this in the sense of like the animation was supreme, and it still is, but we have to go back a little bit, like peel back the onion here, if you will, and talk a little bit more about the nuance. So one thing that is evident, just given the timepiece, is the lack of movement. If you look at, you know, more modern brick films today, there's a lot of extra movement, albeit extra hand gestures and just regular character movement just to add more to it. And I do think that is important in something like this. And I think that Picturesque gets away with basically having none because of the mouth movement. But Jonathan Vaughan still decided to have a decent amount of regular gestures, even though he was using mouth movement, mouth animation. And I think that is a lost art. I've been seeing a lot of modern brick films just almost rely too much on the mouth movement mechanic and getting away from kind of the regular confinements of the medium itself, like of Lego. And I don't want this to come across as, well, no, you guys know me. If you know me for years, you know how I say things. But like, one of the things I don't like about a lot of modern brick films too is that they use a lot of clay to repose figures it does work in some instances. I've seen it work really well. It can make the movement feel a lot smoother, a lot more natural and human-like. But then there are some times where I'm just looking at this and I'm thinking to myself, Lego can't do that. And who am I to say what Lego can and can't do? Call me a boomer, I guess, in that sense. But it's just a little side tangent I wanted to say here. But this story is just, it's simple, but the way it's shot has a lot of depth. Think of the lighting. I think one of the greatest things where I got a lot of my lighting inspiration when I was brick filming a lot was Jonathan Vaughan. Like the scene of the White House and I know there was some After Effects in there and everything that kind of made things a little different, but I feel like unless you have like a DSLR or you've been doing it for a while, it's kind of hard to capture really good lighting. There have been a lot of good instances of lighting. Like when I entered THAC this year, I saw a lot of good instances of lighting from some of the more experienced crowd, and I found that very, very appreciative. But I know we're talking a lot about a bunch of things when we should be talking about Picturesque, so I apologize. There's just so much I want to talk about in this episode. So back to depth. I think we can describe depth in terms of a brick film as not just a compelling set, compelling lighting, but also a story that really can resonate with not just a lot of people, but I do enjoy some of the stories that make you think a little bit. Now, Picturesque is not one of those films where you have to think really hard about. Like it's your classic, almost like spy story where a government agency, or in this case, like a cop, is trying to solve a case. Like that's the essence of this. But what adds so much depth to it, I think, is that it was done in Lego. Like if you think about stories that you've written, say you're a writer or you're an animator and you want to tell a story and you're gonna use whatever medium, Lego is one of the coolest mediums to do it in, and you can convey so much emotion and just raw humanity through Lego without doing a lot of extra things. I think it does sometimes come down to how things are set up technically, how your shot is set up, how your set is built. But one thing I would like to point out about Picturesque is that it doesn't have insane set design. Like there's some CGI in here, and that's fine. But in the scenes where, let's say they're going to the painter's house and they realize like he's been knocked out or whatever, like the baseboard on the ground is gray. There is minimal set design because the film is pretty much shot with everything blurred out. It's heavily focused on the characters and not so much on what's around them. I think what we can do in this aspect is to just get better at building smaller, more detailed sets and only building what the camera can see. I still see it, and I do it in my work every now and again where I will just build a set that is too big. And I think that one of the reasons why I loved my THAC entry was that I did everything pretty small. The only thing that got really big was the traveling for the sword bearer, but like everything else was done in a very, very small set. And you can tell in Picturesque that there's not a whole lot going on, even at the police station, but it's a police station. Like you get the vibe, and even back at the painter's house, like you get where you are, and it's not that detailed. And I think that is a great example, not just of how Jonathan Vaughan, wrote the story and how he conveyed it, but it also comes down to the building as well. Even in some of his older projects, like the Topeka City Menace, you have a similar scenario where set design, very minimal, not a whole lot going on, but the story, kind of head scratcher, made you think a little bit, but there was so much more to offer. And I think another great example of stuff like this, was Something Zerai Productions, which I think now the channel is Chrissy T or something like that. It's been a long time since I've watched them. Bionicle 28 for all of you OGs over there. But they did a good job at this with the Strangers. I think it was called Strangers. Yeah, the Strangers series, where minimal set design, story was compelling, a relative amount of depth. I would still put Picturesque above that. And the other thing, really, like I'm watching part 2 as I record this, and there is just, even though there's a lack of movement with the figures because of the mouth movement, like, you're just there. You're just in it. Like, it feels like a film that was made, to sound really cringy here, it was made with love and passion. And that's definitely something that I don't see a lot of in films today. I think if you look at, and I know I always reference, I want to say not the old guard, because they're still making great films. I think of Mind Game Studios, I think of Nathan Wells, and how they were able to do a lot of great things with The Cleaners. And then, again, I can't wait till we do the episode on The Profession, one of my favorite brick films, really of all time. There's a lot of good stuff there. But if you look, I just want you guys to go and watch Picturesque and tell me what you think, because I think that if people went back to this style of brick film, I think we would have more creativity. I think that we would have, I want to say, a renaissance of just brick filming again, where it's not so view-centric. Like 15 years ago, it's Picturesque Part 2 is sitting at about 23,000 views. This thing should have 1 million views. But it's not going to get 1 million views because it's not optimized for the algorithm, right? And I'm not saying that all of the brick filmers these days are optimizing for the algorithm. I know some are, and you got to play the game, right? I understand that. Like, no one wants their film to get 0 views or to get less views than it is worth, right? But at the same time, these are labors of love, at least back then, that was made for them and not made for anyone else. Maybe it was made for, like, the rest of the brick filming community, but, like, it didn't extend beyond that. And I think Picturesque is a really good example of what brick filming was and what I think it can still be when treated as an art form. And I'm not saying, again, that people don't treat it as an art form. I have been a silent watcher in the Bricks in Motion Discord, and I love looking at it and seeing all of the different people who are coming up with new techniques and are sharing their tests and their, still images. I think the community that has been made in the Discord is wonderful and continues to blossom into something that I'm proud to be a part of and proud to see, as I don't animate as much as I used to, but still consider myself a member of the brick filming community, and it's wonderful. But back to Picturesque again. I remember being so impressed with, I'm looking at it now, there's some movement, and you can clearly see where he freeze-framed things because of the mouth movement, but it's just so beautifully done. It's so beautifully done. I don't understand how this only has 23,000 views. But it is sad that Jonathan Vaughan is no longer making brick films. I know he went to be a writer, and I don't think anyone's heard from him in, I want to say, 7 years. I'm actually going to check his channel out right now and see where he's at. I'm pretty sure he hasn't uploaded in like 7 years. Yeah. Where is Melting Point? That's a tough issue for a lot of people, so I don't want to dwell on that. But I mean, 7 years and his animations still hold up, 15 years later. And I think that's a testament to what he was able to do and what a lot of the people in the old days, in the early 2000s and in the early 2010s, were really able to do. And I just feel like that's been lost somehow. But that I think will do it for the Plastic Depth episode 2. I know this was probably shorter than the last one, but I wanted to make this series like just to highlight films of the past and of the future if I find some that I really like. And I want to point out that, you know, it doesn't always have to be about the algorithm, right? It doesn't have to be about views. And I think Nick Durron, or Jonathan Vaughan in this case, is a great example of one of the most underrated brick filmers of this generation. And even though it's the Tampa City Menace, not Topeka City Menace. I think people could learn a lot from watching his stuff. And yeah. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. I will try not to let it be 90 days until the next one. But if you like this, please subscribe. I try my best to have some regular stuff out here when I can. But I'm glad I was able to, you know, take the time and make this for you. And looking forward to discussing this with you in the comments. You can also find me in the Bricks in Motion Discord. And yeah, anyway, guys, thanks again for listening or watching, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.